Sometimes a smile is not happiness. Sometimes it is armor. When you look at the portraits of Élisabeth Vigée Le Brun, you notice one thing first: the smile. Soft, calm, almost secret. It is not loud joy. It is not laughter. It is something in between, as if the person in the painting knows more than they are willing to say. That smile made her famous. At a time when women in portraits were expected to be silent, rigid statues, her figures were alive, their lips slightly curved, their eyes bright, their faces filled with private thoughts. Critics asked, why do they smile? Because her sitters were not masks, they were people. Behind every smile there was a story, a queen trying not to show fear, a mother hiding worry for her children, a noble woman pretending everything is fine while the world outside is breaking. And Elizabeth understood it. She had learned early that life does not always allow you to cry openly. So she painted the way people really survive, with dignity, with elegance, with a small, mysterious smile that says, I will not break, even if everything else does. Her portraits are not just faces on canvas. They are secrets, carefully wrapped in beauty. And that is why, centuries later, we still look at them and wonder, what did they know? What were they hiding? And what would they say if the painting could speak? The mysterious smile remains, not an answer, but an invitation to look a little longer. Her childhood did not begin among toys. It began among paintings. Other children played in the streets, but she grew up with the smell of paint. Her father's studio was her favorite place. There was no silence there. There was the sound of brushes touching wooden palettes, the soft whisper of colors. One day she sat close to her father's table and simply watched. Red, blue, green. The colors were not just colors. They were speaking. No one knew back then that this little girl would one day paint queens. She filled the margins of her notebooks with flowers, faces, and eyes. No one told her stop drawing. On the contrary, her father smiled and said, keep going. But happiness did not last long. Her father died suddenly. Silence fell over the house. The rooms that once smelled of paint became empty. For her, it was not only losing a father, she lost the only person who truly understood her. And the world said to her, painting is not for girls. This is not art. It's a child's game. Even if a woman paints, it isn't serious. She did not argue. She did not answer. She did not complain. She simply picked up the brush and painted. On wallpaper, on old papers, even on the corner of tablecloths. For her, colors were a door, and on the other side of that door, she was free. That was the greatest secret of her childhood. She wasn't just drawing. She was learning how to survive. And one day, everyone saw it. A little girl rose from within the world of colors and became one of the greatest women painters in history. Her childhood did not remain as a memory of games. It remained as brushstrokes. By the age of 15, she was already painting commissioned portraits. This was not just a talented child. This was a teenage girl who earned money with her art and supported her family. Noble families invited her into their homes. The girl who arrived was quiet, modest. When she entered the room, whispers followed. Is this the child? Is she really the one who will paint? Elizabeth said nothing. She simply placed the canvas in front of her, and the room fell silent. Because after the very first brushstroke, everyone understood. This was not a child in front of them. This was a great artist being born. There was a strange power in her paintings. She did not only paint faces, she brought the inner world of a person onto the canvas. If a woman smiled, you could see the longing hidden beneath the smile. If a man stood tall and serious, you could still feel the fragility in his eyes. Elizabeth had not learned this. She felt it. At that time, being a woman artist meant seeing doors closed in front of you. She was refused entry to the art academy. The reason was simple. She is a woman. They tried to keep her away from exhibitions. They didn't want her name written anywhere. Some even said, if these paintings were made by a woman, then surely a man helped her. But there was one thing they could not stop, her fame spreading, because her portraits spoke. They traveled from salon to salon, from mouth to mouth. People told one another, call her, she will paint you in such a way, you will no longer see yourself the same. And then one truth became clear for Élisabeth Vigée Le Brun. She could be an artist without anyone's permission. She did not need an academy, a title, or a certificate. She needed only three things: a canvas, a brush, and the courage to keep going without silence. And in that moment, a young artist was born. When a revolution approaches, the first things to burn are not books. The first things to burn are portraits. Because a portrait is not just an image, it is the face of power. It is the memory of palaces, crowns, and silk dresses. And when the masses rise, they do not want to see those memories. When the French Revolution began, Élisabeth Vigée Le Brun was already the painter of queens. She had painted soft smiles, delicate eyes, the shimmering light of silk and gold. But the people shouting in the streets did not see delicacy in her paintings. They saw only one thing: a world that was not theirs. Palace doors were broken open, halls were looted, portraits were torn from the walls. Some were ripped to pieces. Some were thrown into bonfires. Some had their eyes cut out so they would stop looking. Because revolution has its own law, paper is silent, but a painted gaze accuses you. For Elizabeth, this was not just losing her works. It was facing a question: whose artist am I? The people's or the crown's? She slipped out at night, crossed borders, left the country without even speaking her name. Behind her, portraits turned to ash. But one truth remained: you can burn a painting, but you cannot erase a gaze. And the faces she painted did not disappear from history. They moved into memory. When she fled her homeland, she did not see herself as defeated. She simply knew a new chapter had begun. She hid her name. Cities changed, languages changed, addresses changed. One thing did not change: the brush. Rome, Vienna, St. Petersburg. Wherever a door opened, people said only one thing: paint our portrait. As she crossed borders, her fame crossed them too. The painter who had been pushed away from one court was invited into others. Because art has its own law. Kings fall, politics shifts, but a gaze once seen cannot be erased from memory. Exile did not become her punishment. Exile became her freedom. She was no longer only the painter of queens. She painted poets, musicians, and ordinary people as well. Her paintings prove something. She did not just paint silk dresses, she painted the human being. Sometimes the rooms she stayed in were cold. Sometimes money was scarce. Sometimes she was completely alone. But every morning she did the same thing. She placed the canvas and began again. Because by then she understood: exile is not a place. It is a state of being, and art is the only way to overcome it. They expelled her from her country, but they could not expel her from history. And one day the world understood. Élisabeth Vigée Le Brun did not simply survive. Even in exile, she triumphed. Sometimes a moment arrives when words are no longer enough. History grows tired of writing, arguments fade, even judges fall silent. Because something else steps onto the stage: talent. It cannot be explained. It cannot be measured. No one has the power to grant it. It either exists or it doesn't. For Élisabeth Vigée Le Brun, it was exactly this. She was not simply painting, she was breathing inside colors. They criticized her. They belittled her for being a woman. They wanted to decide her place for her. But then a moment would come. She touched the canvas with her brush, and the room went silent. Because everyone understood there was nothing left to argue about. This was not about lessons, diplomas, or permission. This was a dialogue between talent and history. Revolution passed. Palaces fell. Names changed. Crowns dropped. But the gazes in her portraits remained. History does not always choose the strongest. Sometimes it chooses the most gifted. Because power can fall, but before true talent, even history stops for a moment and becomes silent. And in that silence, one sentence remains: only she could have done this. Her life was not just a biography. It was a story written with a brush by fate itself. The girl who was once told, "You can't, you are a woman," painted queens. The artist who was driven from her country returned to the world through its museums. Crowns were lost. Palaces collapsed. Revolutions passed. But one thing did not change. the gaze on the canvas. Today, when we stand in a quiet museum hall in front of one of her paintings, we suddenly understand. She did not paint for kings or palaces, she painted for people. And maybe that is why names fade, years pass, yet her paintings still look at us and softly whisper, "You too can leave a mark."